Hello everyone, my name is Philip Howell and I'm a geographer at Emmanuel College, and I thought I'd use these lockdown conditions to take up the invitation from the college to say a little bit about my own research. That research has focused in the last few years for me on animal geography, and I realise that for those of you out there who aren't geographers, even those of you who are, that might seem a peculiar topic even for a very wide-ranging and peculiar discipline, an interdisciplinary discipline like geography. But I'll try and defend it as best I can in the few minutes that I have. I became interested in animal geography long ago, and it's an interesting thing to me to reflect that this is the 20th anniversary of the first piece I ever published on non-human animals. That was a chapter in a collection called Animal Spaces and Beastly Places, edited by Chris Philo and Chris Wilbert. Academic books are never likely to trouble the upper reaches of the Amazon bestseller lists, but this has become well known to geographers and in animal studies more generally because it set out the terms of reference for a field of study which became called animal geography, the geography of animals. But there's a proviso there. It isn't the geography of animals, non-human animals per se, it's the geography of human beings' relations with animals. At least when it was first envisaged, animal geography focused on the relation between humans and their non-human animal companions and creatures. In some ways, that follows the classic tenets of geography, which has always been interested in the relations between humans and the natural world. We don't use the same terms now, not generally, but books such as Man's Role in Changing the Face of the Earth, or I'm thinking of in history, a book called Man and the Natural World. As I say, we don't use quite that same terminology, but geography, history, lots of other subjects, including anthropology, archaeology, they've long been interested in the relations between human beings and their different communities and their environment, including the creatures that surround us, that accompany our journey. Now, animal geography it staked its claim for existence, it staked its justification on the idea that the geography of animals was crucial to how human beings treated other animals. And that's obvious if one thinks about categories of animals like pests. This isn't a zoological taxonomy, but it's a kind of cultural taxonomy. Pests are creatures that are out of place. They're where we don't want them to be. An animal in one place might be acceptable, but an animal in another becomes a pest. Likewise, a pet or a companion animal, these are animals that we typically think of as belonging to the home. At least we in the West, in the modern West, have thought of pets as largely, not exclusively, but largely belonging to the home. We allot them a space, and in giving them a space, we give them a certain identity, we give them a certain existence on our own terms, of course. The same is true for wild animals. We think about wildlife and the wilderness, and with a few exceptions, I'm thinking of that Netflix series Tiger King, we think of exotic animals exotic to us in the West, as belonging properly in their natural environment in what we call the wild. In all these ways, the geography of animals is crucial to how we treat them. And that landmark collection 20 years ago, that set out a field of study, and it generated a whole level of interest in the ways in which we place animals, both materially, physically, but also culturally, in social terms. And I've been working in that area for now 10 years, something like that. I published a little bit in animal history. I sometimes get thought of as an animal historian, but I'm a geographer and an animal geographer most importantly. I've been interested in how we as human beings place animals in relation to us. And of course, it helps us define who we are. It helps to define cities and human society, with the idea that cities, for instance, are the opposite of nature. Now, we've seen during the lockdown, you'll all have seen stories about other animals expanding their range, moving in open spaces in the daytime, recolonizing the city because of the lack of human activity that's involved. And animals have never been wholly excluded, even from cities which we think of as our principal, premier human creation. But those animals have found opportunities because of the lockdown that they haven't had before. It's a reminder that we share, even cities, we share our spaces with other animals. And animal geography, along with animal studies, sometimes called human animal studies, this range of this interdisciplinary enterprise has looked at the complexities involved in human relations with other animals. That's not all that could be done, but it's certainly how I framed my work. And my most specific work has really been about companion animals as pets. And even more specifically, I've written about the place of companion dogs in Victorian Britain and Victorian cities. So it's even more specialized. But my own thesis is that despite the fact that humans have kept animals, they've kept dogs for thousands and thousands of years, that modern pet keeping, modern keeping of dogs as pets is relatively recent. Of course, that goes along with the idea of modernity. But despite the fact that dogs have been human companions for thousands of years, I would argue that it's only in the last 150, 200 years that something that we would recognize as as a pet dog has emerged. And by that I mean the sense of dogs being pedigree species, dog breeds, that is barely more than 150, 200 years old. Phenomena like dedicated pet food, dog food, that is 150 years old, not much more than that. But most importantly for me, as a geographer, it's the distinction between the pets, the animals that you welcome into the home, and those animals that are left out in the streets. And for dogs at least, cats are a different beast altogether. But for dogs, for modern Western societies, we have tended to think that dogs should be kept in the home. There are working dogs, of course, guard dogs, sheep dogs, but pet dogs are animals that we think of as belonging to the home and belonging to particular owners, particular families. The corollary of that, the sad corollary, is that street dogs, stray dogs, have become a problem for contemporary societies, at least in many Western societies. All over the world you see street dogs, but in the last 100, 150 years or so, the street dog in the modern West has emerged as a problem. They emerge as a kind of nuisance. They're not where they should be, either because of animal welfare considerations or because we think they're a danger or a risk or a nuisance to us. And that has meant that street dogs have found themselves policed into dog shelters, rounded up, and sometimes shuffled off this mortal coil because of their danger to us, or because we think it is better for them that they don't exist as street dogs. So there's a kind of dyad, the home and the streets, the private space and public space. That's the axis on which my own work on dogs as companion animals has really revolved. That's it, I think, before my voice gives out entirely. That's the work that I've been doing in the last few years. It's not everything that I've done, but it's certainly been a central plank of my recent research. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you and your pets and your families, everyone else, is safe and sane in these very strange conditions. Thanks very much.